business as opposed to in it. So for me, that includes an overhaul of my website. Now, how do I know this brilliant panel of talent? I'll tell you. Ever scroll through Facebook and see the same ads over and over again? For me, that ad was Jessica Jordana's for her ad copywriting. I don't buy from Facebook ads unless there's some really good word of mouth endorsements to go along with them. Fast forward to my friend Seishu from Tiffinbox, who purchased Jess's promptlets and said they were magical. So, of course, I visited Jess's site and could literally imagine being her friend, going out to coffee, and hanging with her and her dog, Joey Tribbiani, while we watch an episode of Friends. That's the power of words, and that is what you and I could both be doing with our websites. So I knew that I needed to get her on here today. In 2013, I stumbled upon a blog called Psychology for Photographers. It's an amazing resource if you've never heard of it. I'm pretty sure I force-friended Jenika via email, and she agreed to let me be a test reader for her workbook, Irresistible Websites. Flash forward a few years, and she agreed to speak at the Animal Image Makers Conference for me here in the Twin Cities. Her session is one of the most anticipated by our attendees. So naturally, when I needed an expert for this roundtable, I sent an email and begged her. Clearly, it worked. My connection to PhotoBiz is John Krasman. Back in March, when I determined my website needed help, John from PhotoBiz was there to lend help, as their customers, as their customer service team always is. They're always around. They were my biggest help and cheerleaders when beginning my website migration. So when I needed an SEO expert, it felt natural to ask PhotoBiz for help. They delivered Jeremy Heiler, whose passion in life is helping small business owners connect with the right clients via their website. I know Jeremy's methods work because Jen Lewis and her website vouch for it. Welcome to all of my experts. Thanks for making time to give back to the photographic community today.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Participants, if you have questions, here's what I'd like you to do. Start your question with the letter Q at the beginning, so Ronan can easily identify that it's a question. And then, if you'd like an answer from a specific panelist, type their name right after the Q, and then your question. All right, I'd like to kick us off with this. For most photographers, overhauling their website is a huge, daunting task. Because it feels hard to chunk it down, it never gets done. What advice would you give to help our participants just get started? And I'll take that from all of you.
Well, I'll jump in. So I think that one thing I want everyone to remember is that you're already good at all the skills you need to build a website, right? So if you hop on the phone with your accountant one day, right? You know what your accountant wants to hear from you. Like maybe you'll do a little chit chat, but you know that he doesn't need to hear the whole backstory about this crazy thing that happened to you last week. He or she probably just wants to know how you're doing, and then you get down to business, right? Like we're constantly looking around the world and assessing what is it that this person needs from me? And you're already very, very skilled at giving that person what they need from you. And a lot of that comes from your ability to empathize with another person and to understand this is where they're coming from, this is what they're looking for today, this is what they need from me. And those are exactly the skills that you already have that you can bring when you're gonna go to do your website. So just, I would say before you even get to the point of breaking things down, and I'm seeing some of the other panelists nod here, I would just start with like empathy for the other person. Like when someone looks to, goes to Google or clicks a link that a friend shared, what is it that they're looking for in that moment? What are they hoping to see? And just start from there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Jenika. And I would also say, I don't know if anybody's ever read Gary Keller's book called The One Thing, but this one quote always sticks in my head. He says that we need to be in the habit of finding the one thing that when you do it, everything else becomes easier or better. And I really think that that is the case, especially for working on copy for your website, because it really is just understanding the foundation of your business and understanding how to communicate that to people. And when you really dig deep and establish that foundation, that's going to make social media easier. That's going to make showing up, if we ever show up to networking events again, easier. That's going to make basically everything else in your business easier and better because you have that foundation solid, instead of trying to guess every time you show up somewhere.
Yeah. And I agree with both of them. The thing is, I see a lot of customers come through us, and the biggest thing for photographers is they think they have to have everything at the start. Like everything has to be perfect before the website can launch. The one thing I educate people on is you got to work on your core pages, your homepage, your about page, and contact page. If those three are active on your website, and then you have a gallery that you can constantly be updating and refreshing, those are the things to start with. You don't have to have 30 pages talking about every single service that you do, because maybe you're not comfortable writing that content. And that's why you lean on professionals and look for copywriters, or, really take the time to write that content. And, some things that we have internally, we have, SEO services and other things like that through PhotoBiz, and even a jumpstart program where we'll actually build the site that way. Because some people aren't comfortable with building websites, or they don't naturally know how to design. You might have a great eye for something, for a photo, but when it comes to digital and web, it can still be very difficult for people to manage. So don't think you have to do everything right away. Take your time, focus on the homepage and the about page and the contact.
And then I'd like each of you, why are words, why are visual cues, and why is SEO so important? Just set the stage for us.
I'll start with words. I think that we, including probably everybody in this panel, wish that our services or our work would sell itself, but that's just not the case. And I think a lot of times in a very visual heavy industry, we tend to think that. We tend to think, if my work is good enough, then people will find it, or then it will sell. And that is really selling yourself short, because your job is really to help people see themselves inside of your work. And that takes a lot of legwork in order to do, because somebody can land on your site and think that's a pretty picture, but it's a big leap to get them from that's a pretty picture to I could see myself having a picture like that. And so I think that's really the work of our copy on our websites, is taking them from interested and knowing that they want really great images and things like that, to helping them believe that we can make that happen for them through our process, through our experience, through what we're really good at, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that the words are the vehicle for the selling. The images that you're showing through your work and things like that can support that, kind of like a thesis statement and then the supporting evidence sort of. But if you just have the images, then that leaves people to draw their own conclusions. And we don't want to do that. We want to tell them the conclusions that we want them to draw about our work.
Yeah.
And then what are some of the most common mistakes when you begin working with a new client and you review their site? What are some of the most common mistakes you're seeing photographers make?
So I actually want to just piggyback on top of something she just said, that you want people to be able to see themselves in your site. Okay. So what I think happens is you have beautiful work, right? And you put it up and you want people to see it and you want them to think this is amazing work and I want to hire this person to create this for me. But what you have to remember is people are always thinking in relation to themselves. They're not actually thinking about you in that moment. And so what they're thinking when they see it might be something like, wow, that person in that photo is really beautiful. I really should lose weight before so that I will look like that person in that photo. Or if you're a family photographer, look at all these beautiful kids that are smiling. My children do not behave well. There's no way my family's going to look like this. And also look at all these matching outfits. I don't have matching outfits. I don't have time to think about matching when I'm purchasing clothing for you know what I mean? They're getting to this tornado. And so one thing that visuals can also do, and I don't necessarily know that this has to be on a website. It could be a strategic thing, But I know that one of the most popular blog posts I ever put up from a family photo session was I put up like an outtake, right? Because they wanted a posed photo. And that wasn't usually the kind of thing I did, but they asked for it, so I did it. And I took an outtake of like, this is what it looked like to set up this photo. And one kid's like, you know, this, and one has like a crazy face, and the parents were like, ah, you know, and then I showed like, and here's what I got. And everyone, it was like, there was this collective sigh of relief, like, like, I don't have to show up looking like this in order for this person to create this work for me. So the more, just the moral of that story is the biggest mistake I see people make is not thinking what is going through the client's mind. Like, how are they going to react to this photo? How are they going to relate this photo or this piece of copy to themselves? The photographers think of how it shows them or supports them, but you got to think about what's that client thinking? How are they reacting?
Yeah, I agree. It's very interesting when people are setting up their pages and stuff like that. Like even like people who want to, photographers who's like, I do a little bit of everything, but but your bread and butter is weddings, but the wedding is sparsely throughout the website, but you have photos of families and stuff like that. People are looking for that one thing. And if you don't have that one thing visually representing what your core of the business is, then they can't ideally see themselves there as well as a customer. Like, well, I see a lot of family photos, but where's your wedding stuff? A lot of things that I see, a lot of common mistakes is that being an issue. But one thing I tell customers to do is they rely too heavily on that single contact page or a booking page. And that's the one link, and it's just in the menu. And they just want people to be like, hey, come click here, or it's a call to action in certain places. I tell people that they should, if you have certain galleries specific for different types of photography, to make those pages more targeted. You can have your gallery there. You can have some words on the page, make them feel invited, make them understand the stories about, what you're trying to do for their day. If it's, a magical wedding experience, and then have a form on those pages, and you can have those pages tagged. So, those forms tagged. So when you get that leads in, you're like, oh, this person went to the wedding page. They filled out the information to learn more. It's just, you understand your customer more and more by having things targeted. And it's going to even work better for Google, because people searching for wedding specifically might land on that page versus just your home page.
A really wise woman once told me, or maybe I read it, that you're only talking to one person at a time. So each of your separate branches of your website should only be telling that one story and really only speaking to that one individual.
Yeah.
So I think that's what all of you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Jeremy said. One of the things I have written down is that a common mistake is dead galleries, because I think a lot of times we have the gallery as the focus because maybe we're afraid to have a call to action that says like book or something like that on the homepage. So we're like, oh, just send them to the gallery. But then if your gallery is just a bunch of images and you don't have any calls to action, then they're going to have fun clicking through the images. And then they're probably going to click off of your website instead of having that journey in mind of, like you said, having some text on the page, maybe having a call to action at the bottom of the page or at the top of the page or something, instead of just expecting people to go back up to the navigation. But another common mistake that I see for photographers specifically in their copy is stopping at the cliche words. So some things are like capturing moments or freezing moments or adventure.
Have you been looking at my website again?
There's a very big adventure movement right now, but everybody's version of adventure is very different. And then there's, what's another one? Oh, photography for happy couples. And that specifically is not really attracting and repelling anyone, because I doubt anyone would opt to say, we're not really a happy couple, so we probably shouldn't go with them, right? So if you can have copy that's a little bit more specific to what's unique about your experience, the type of people you serve and things like that, and a really good way to do that is if you feel like you really are an adventure photographer, then write on a piece of paper, adventure, and then write why 3 times. And it's a super easy exercise to just go deeper. Like, why adventure? Why does that matter? Write your answer to that. then ask why to that answer and ask why again. And that's going to get you a lot deeper to what your version of adventure is versus just saying adventure and hoping that people with hiking boots come to you automatically. Because I think a lot of people who have that in mind, like my sister-in-law is a photographer and her couples literally climb mountains to get their photos. But that might be really scary for some people. And they might think like, oh yeah, let's have an adventure. But then they don't have the gear or whatever. So that just, you have to be really specific when it comes to typing yourself or giving yourself a certain kind of style. And so I think that is a place where a lot of improvement can happen for sure.
I agree.
Jess, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I was just going to follow up real quick. I agree. And people don't search that way on Google. Like, oh, I'm looking for an adventure wedding, you know, or I live, you know, someone who's going to capture my moment. Think about how people search, you know, Google, you know, they're looking for wedding photographer location. So, you know, make sure those are the key things that you're getting in there, you know, that you do this. And then you can add the, you know, the awe-inspiring words like Jessica's saying, but make it practical. You know, as mundane as it might seem to say, like, I'm just a wedding photographer, that works.
Can I say something? Oh, go ahead.
Yes,
Dave.
go.
Well, I also think one reason people go with like the capture the moments or I'm an adventure, you know, adventurous couples is we want to be inclusive and we want to like reach everybody. We want to wrap everyone in a big hug and feel really warm and cozy. And I think that I'm just going to give you all blanket permission right now to exclude some people in favor of getting people that you really do want. And also to remember that sometimes things can be inclusive that you wouldn't necessarily think. So for example, I had a client who was a wedding photographer and she likes sort of bright, happy, funny, humorous people. And the colors on her website, you know, attracted people who, you know, it meshed with that. But one of the headlines that we put up for her was a Friends reference, which I think Jessica will, you know, she's like, you know, I can't remember the exact line, but, you know, wedding photography, you know, location. And then because you guys are lobsters, and it references this Friends episode, like, you know, they're lobsters. And the thing is, that's so weird, right? No one would ever like, I see someone asked in the comments, like, are there certain words, like, how do you decide keywords for your business? And I think there's SEO keywords, certainly, but you also have to remember that sometimes the keyword that's going to get somebody to hire you is going to be that you pinged some reference or something that just speaks right to them.
Yep.
Or that they feel like they're in on an inside joke just by showing up on your page. And that's going to make them feel included, not just these big general sweeping words.
Yep.
Jess said something that made me tangent out. So I'm going a little off script. Not that there is a script, but so Jess talked about essentially page mapping. So at the beginning of your website, how many of you are mapping, like taking a sheet of paper and like mind mapping and saying, this is my main page. And then that main page is going to go here and it's going to do this. And it's going to, like, how important is that? And is that a helpful tool for some of you? I know when I talked to Jenika the other day, we did a quick call to prep for this. And you mentioned when people go through and they, you know, they don't do a complete overhaul, they do, I like to call it the trailer park method, where they add things on in different spots to their existing thing. How do we battle that? How do we, should it always be an overhaul, or is it acceptable to move pages around later so that they better fit your navigation flow?
Well, I think we got to remember first what I think Jeremy said earlier about you don't have to have this perfect starting. Okay, so just let's take that off the table. That said, if you take a piece of paper and you think, okay, what is the experience I want the person to have? I want them to go here so that they get to know me. Then I want them to go here so that they understand exactly how my service differs from someone else's. Then I want them to go here so they can see, like, yes, I can shoot a complete wedding and you're going to get all the things. You know what I mean? Like you walk through that process. You only have to implement one chunk at a time. But if you take the time to do that, it honestly will take you 10 minutes tops. Then you have a format to go and implement over time as your schedule allows. Because what I see, I'll sit down with a client to do their website, and I'll be like, okay, so where did this page come from? Because, you know, I'm trying to like help them overhaul the site. And they're like, oh yeah, I just threw that on because whatever. And 5 years ago, my friend Joe said you should, you know what I mean? Like it kind of just evolved over time and people just added chunks and they've just lost the plot. And if they come back and make that clean line of how do I want people to experience this, it's a lot easier to come back and just kind of get rid of those things that just sort of got tacked on over time because you did a promo video once and you threw it on the website. And the other quick thing I wanted to say is make sure, and I'm sure Jeremy can speak to this much more than I can, but like when you go to analytics, you can break down by page and see like which pages get the most traffic and where the drop-offs. It's quite common that people will think, oh, they're going to get this information from this page, but actually hardly anyone goes to that page. Yeah. So make sure you look and see what are people actually looking at. And sometimes that'll tell you what are your strongest pages or what are your most important pages. And you can work with that to put your most important information there.
Yeah, and there's a free tool out there. I think it's still free. Don't quote me on it, but it's called Hotjar. It's basically a heat map. So you could put it on your pages and basically you can see how far people scroll onto a page. I think up to like 1,000 users for each page. So, you know, you can see like, oh, they're only getting like halfway down. They're not even getting to all this meat and potatoes that I added to the page, this Frankenstein page of content that I've added, but they're only getting to like, you know, 30 or 40%. So, okay, what's stopping them? Is that where they're clicking on something to go to something else? And that's just more effective? Or is the core information already done at the 20, 30% mark? Those are tools out there that you can experiment with. But again, they were talking about, you know, picking and adding pieces from places. You know, if you had a website for over 10 years and you're just constantly building on top of it, you know, at some point you got to know when to also pull back as well. There's, you know, it's not completely minimalism, but it's just knowing what people are going to read. We understand that people don't like to read a lot. That's why we tell them to put images. And luckily for you, you're a photographer. Having, you know, images to spice up words and words to spice up images. You need to have that balance. And I see someone asking about the about page in there. I think the about page is one of the key pages that you need because it's what I like to call the speed dating page. They're getting to learn everything about you. And I hope you have a photo of yourself on there too. I think people, you know, photographers like to hide themselves behind the camera. Obviously, you know, we're very protective of that, right? But it's where the customer finally gets to meet you for the first time, especially if they don't know you. And this is their first chance to meet you. So have that picture, have that information there.
Since we're talking about speed dating, I just wanted to let you all know that I did deep condition for you today. So you're very welcome. Also, I feel like this question that just rolled in is pertinent to what we're talking about. So I'm going to ask it really quick. How important is it to use links or colors and buttons to link to other pages? Or should it just be an endless scroll?
No.
Oh,
I know, right? I mean,
Jessica's face. Yeah. Tell me more. Say more words.
Definitely calls to action on every single page. And I think that having them at different points in the journey is really important because you have different styles of buyers. I'm sure Jenika knows a lot more about this than I do, but there are certain buyers who know what they want. And when you say something at the very top of your page, they're like, okay, I'm ready to book. And they don't necessarily want to have to keep scrolling and reading through everything in order to find that button to book. So I think having calls to action frequently, but when you have your calls to action, the copy needs to coach them through what they're going to get on the other side. Mm-hmm. So if the button says just book or something like that, but you don't have anything that tells them like what's going to happen on the other side, people get anxiety and they don't want to click it because they're like, what is going to happen? Am I just is it going to draft my credit card or something? So I think it's really important to have lots of those CTAs, but make sure that you build the copy around them to make people feel comfortable in clicking.
Yeah. Also long pages. Oh my goodness. I think that was a trend that happened for a while, but I'm hoping people are starting to get away from that. The user experience is awful for it. Have you ever been to one of those pages where you click and then all of a sudden you click this one link and it drives you all the way down to the bottom of the footer and you're like, I think I missed like 40 pages of content. You can't expect everyone to read all that stuff and get that experience. I get like trying to put everything out there, but it's better to break it up in pages, and it's also better for search, because then I relate it to like you basically have one fishing pole if you're relying on a single page to tell everything you do, versus having multiple ones, which is literally why it's called the web. The more pages you have and then blogs that you have on top of that, it just extends your web out there more.
Ooh, blogging. We'll talk about, like, remind me about that towards the end. Like, I'm going to ask later if blogging is dead or not. But anyway, okay, so we do have some questions rolling in. I appreciate those. We're going to hold some of them for right now. If you are watching on Facebook, again, please put in the comments if you have a question, put a Q, and then if you're looking for a specific panelist's answer, Q, and then the panelist name, and then your question, and Ronan is watching that for me. Let's talk about words for a hot minute. What steps would you suggest photographers take in personalizing website copy so that it sounds like us, but it's also conveying the right message to attract the type of clients we love to serve? Yeah, go.
Go ahead, Jenika. You go first.
Oh, okay. Well, so I have a class called Irresistible You where I talk about this a lot. And one of the exercises that I teach is to think about your ideal client, like the person that you really enjoy serving. So think about some of the best clients you've had, and think about how well did you want to know that person, right? Is this the kind of person who you became friends with and you text every once in a while? Is this someone that you just like see at the park and say like hi once a year? Like where are you sort of naturally with your clients? How comfortable are you with them? And use that to dial up or down how personal you get on your website. Because the answer is not uniform, right? Like I might be comfortable with something that's like much more personal and succeed with that strategy. We can all think of photographers who give very personal information on their blogs and websites. And there are other people who know they actually want some distance and they want some professionalism, and there are going to be people who are attracted to that too. So just think about your clients and how close of a friend would I want to be with this person? Not that you're actually going to be this close with every client, but let that help you decide. It's a good ruler.
I like that. I also think that conversational, it doesn't have to be personal. So when it comes to copy, I think that conversational, outside of, Jeremy's probably going to go against me on this, but that's fine. Outside of like the headlines for the SEO and all of that kind of stuff, conversational is the name of the game now, because we can't lean back on those in-person meetings for people to really get the gist of who we are. And so I think a lot of times we overthink brand voice. And I'm actually kind of anti-brand voice a little bit, that you don't really need to stress that much about it because it's not the most important thing. And so I think we can take a really lax approach to brand voice, not lax, but simple approach, by just thinking through how we actually talk and trying to help that come through on the page, because we were all probably taught in school how to write, and that really gets in our way when it comes to copy, because we're like, okay, is this like a compound sentence? I'm not supposed to say I or you or anything like that, and it just throw all of that out completely. And a really good way to do that, exactly, Jenika, a really good way to do that is if you have like a voice memo or a video or anything of you talking to somebody, take that and listen to it. It's going to be a little cringy for you, but just pretend that you are an objective party and take some notes. Take some notes about your inflection, about your tone. Take some notes about words that you say frequently. Take some notes about maybe words that you would never say and things like that. And that is going to help you a lot to be able to make sure that that personality is coming through on the page. But I think when it comes to your ideal clients, merging them in there, it's more about what you're talking about for your ideal clients, because they care about the content and what they're getting out of it. And yes, they want like a human element to it for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think thinking through the details about yourself that you can tell them that will maybe relate with them versus just spitfiring everything possible about yourself.
Yeah.
Thinking through elements of your own story or elements of your process or things like that that will resonate with them, and calling those things out on the page to help draw them in. Because if we just have a bunch of text that we're just kind of rambling through a story and we haven't really thought through it, then they're not going to pull themselves back into the page. We have to do that for them. So I think that that's probably what I would recommend, is take a simple approach to your style, to like sounding like yourself, and don't overthink it too much. And then really think through what your audience is going to relate to. And that's going to really pull them into your website.
I don't disagree with you at all, Jessica. I think that's very important. I think there's a few things.
Sure.
I came from a screenwriting background, so I actually write dialogue better than direction of screen action. And I feel like Google is actually interested in one big thing is we tell people about meta descriptions and keywords is you see a lot of people do old tactics, black hat tactics, like I'm Greensboro portrait photographer, Greensboro family portrait, Greensboro senior, and just keep on plugging that in places. And Google is an artificial intelligence at this point. It wants to learn to be smarter. And the way to be smarter is to be more human. So the more human inflections that you have, the more humor that you actually use words and playfulness and stuff like that, Google's actually looking at that and is like, okay, this is entertaining to people. So that's how like Google rankings are affected. Like, okay, people are resonating with these stories and these ways that the page is approached. So let me make this page go up higher. It doesn't want to see a robot talk. It doesn't want to see a robot talk because it's a robot and it knows what robots talk like. So it doesn't want that at all. So having a natural conversation style is great. I think a lot of people get afraid of it, or they're just afraid of being writers themselves. And the biggest thing I say is, write as much as you think you can, have someone check over it as well, and use tools like Grammarly and other things like that out there to help with your grammar, because that's a big thing too.
There's a large part of me that really just wants to start talking in a robot accent right now. And I'm going to hold back. I need you to know that I'm showing restraint. Okay, I saw something that come through that I thought was pertinent to right now. So I'm going to hop in with it. Going back to something that you said earlier, Jessica, I just changed all of my contact me buttons to book now. Do you have a quick example of how to prep your potential customer as to what will happen if they press the button?
I think an easy way off the top of my head would be sometimes you can put a little bit of text right above the button, and it doesn't have to be the same size as everything else. It doesn't have to be a headline size or anything like that. But even if it's just like a question, like ready to get started, book now. That leads people more naturally into it than just like book now. So I think that having a question above it is a really good idea. Or if you have, like, say they were going to click book now and it was going to go to like a scheduling page or something, and people might not know what to do with that. You could have a question that says like, ready to schedule a discovery call, book now. And so that just gives people more confidence on what they're booking. If it's going straight to, I'm wondering if it's going straight to a contact page that they're going to fill out a form and things like that. I think that would be more general, like ready to get started, because they're ready to like start the whole shebang with you, basically.
Karen, will you hop in the chat and just tell me where your pages go to? Is it going to a questionnaire, or is it going to a book now something? Okay, sorry, derailed. Another question that just came in, which I swear is on my list, but a lot of people have it clearly. So if you're a solo business person, should you write your web content in first or third person?
Well, I'd love to hear Jessica's thoughts about this, but I'll just say that I generally advocate first person unless they are also dealing with a virtual assistant, in which case that could be confusing. They're like, wait, who's this I emailed Clarissa. Why is Jan emailing me now? And in that case, I would go with a third person, potentially, maybe not. You could also just say, like, in your calls to action, you could tell them what to expect. Like, click here to schedule discovery call, and my trusty assistant, Jan, will shoot over a link, like, just tell them what to expect back. But I mean, third person is it's just very formal, and it builds a lot of distance between you and the client. So I think back to that question I asked you to consider earlier, like, how close of a friend do you want to be with this person? Most likely you're not texting most of your friends in third person, but if you really do want this to be a company and have a lot of distance, I have had a couple of clients who really wanted a ton of distance and they wanted to be seen as professionals. A lot of them worked in kind of like trickier scenarios, and they wanted some of that professionalism to come back in. And so most like wedding photographers aren't in that kind of scenario though. So the only other thing I'll say is keep in mind, I actually think people forget the second person. And by that, I mean, it's okay to start a sentence with you. You want photos that are blank. Here's what I'll provide. You want to start talking in the second person sometimes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think first person, if at all possible. The only instance that I've ever used third person on my website is I have a speaking page specifically, and I know that people who are looking for speakers need a bio to swipe, and they're going to like tell it to the other people that they're running it by and things like that. So they're not going to say, hi, I'm Jess and I'm blah, blah, blah. So in that sense, I use third person, but everywhere else I use first person. And I also am a huge fan of second person. With most clients, especially on sales pages, we actually do what we call a U sweep in our editing process. And we go through and rewrite most sentences to include the word you. And then we just go back through and edit some of it out, because sometimes you'll find that you have 2 or 3 paragraphs that have nothing to do with your ideal client, and you need to figure out how to relate it back to them. And so that's a really good exercise too. It's going to sound crazy when you have all of your sentences with you in them and things like that. But once you edit it out, it's really going to sound very natural, and it'll make sure that people are drawn to the copy because they know that it's about them. So I think first person also, if you have like a team that is a very well-oiled team that people will be seeing and working with, like Jenika said, you can use we in some places, but whatever you choose, whether it's I or we, make sure that that stays consistent, because a lot of times I see it's I in one place and we in other places, and it just gets a little confusing for people. So just pick one and stick with it.
What are some of the best words for call to action buttons?
I think that could go on for hours. I think anything that call to action buttons also need to be consistent. So if you have one that says like book now, and then you have another one that says, oh, I want to get that, or something like that, then those are really inconsistent, and people may feel really threatened and bombarded by the book now and really like confused by the, oh, I want to get that. So again, if you have like a frame or a format for your call to action buttons, like, you're going to have like 2 words, or you're going to have a few words that are in first person, so it sounds like the reader is saying whatever they're going to do on the button, then make sure you just keep that consistent. Some people with more conversational and like personality filled brands, we like to do those more first person style buttons, because it's like the reader is reading through the page and then they get to the point that they want to book, and the button says, I'm ready to book, or something like that. So it just is a more natural progression of how they're actually thinking. And whenever we can get inside somebody's actual thoughts, that's always perfect. So I would say consistency matters. Probably more so than what's on the actual button. I could give you like a whole list of CTA swipe files and things like that, but I have those for people as they're writing their websites with the promptlets. So there are quite a few that work, I think.
Can I just say real quick, you can also go up one level from like, yes, there are lists of great words, but I'm sure Jessica would agree that, like she was saying, like it has to be consistent with your whole site. And you also have to think like, what is it that you're actually trying to get the person to do?
Yes.
Like, are you getting them to book a discovery call? Are you getting them to send you an email telling you the ages of their kids so that you know how to prepare for their session? Like, what is the actual next step that you want someone to come to your website and do? And often when I ask photographers that question, they'll say, well, I just want them to book me. Okay, but what are the actual steps? Like, do they need to book a call? Are they going to schedule something on a calendar? Are they making a payment? Like all of those are going to determine and adjust the exact words. And I think also in terms of consistency, you don't want to like have a bunch of different things, but also don't be afraid to add a little bit of personality. So I had a photographer once who was really into music, and she was a wedding photographer and talked about how she would be like jamming with you on the dance floor and all of that. And so just the way her site was set up, the form to email her and like say the date and everything was at the bottom. And so on the call to action button, I wrote signed, sealed, delivered, because she was talking about like Stevie Wonder songs and people loved it. So it's not even necessarily like the exact word, like here are the magic words that are going to get people to click the magic button, but what have you built up throughout the site that brings that momentum? And maybe the button's going to be just like the culmination of that momentum, or maybe it's going to be kind of a fun, silly surprise depending on your personality.
Right. And I think you would probably agree too, if that button was at the very top on the homepage, people probably wouldn't get it. Right. So it has to, with something like that, you have to build up. But I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think it really establishes trust with people if you tell them what they're going to click on and they get that on the other side. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, it really breaks trust if you tell them that they're going to book now and they land on your services page and it's not really them booking and they're kind of confused. So I think just making sure that whatever is on the other side, I totally agree with that.
So I saw a question roll through that is like, what are your best tips for writing copy that convert from website to phone? I feel like we've been answering that throughout this whole 45 minutes that we've been together. And I think it's really just about being you and attracting the right type of client who is excited to book you. So that kind of leads me, I'd like to segue to the client dream sheet, as Jenika refers to it. And then I think that Jess, you call this the upscale client words, or there was something that you referenced in our call the other day talking about how to get bigger clients or more fancy clients.
Gotcha.
So can you, I don't care which of you starts, but will you talk just a little bit about the client dream sheet and like that, how that mapping works? And then Jess, will you talk about using words to attract higher paying clients?
Sure. So what I suggest people do, and I walk people through this in my Irresistible website class, so that's what he's referring to. There's a worksheet, and it's really just about like stopping and thinking about what is this person's experience. And you know that you're targeting, if it's a wedding, it's a couple, maybe your ideal couples that in their early 30s. And they are kind of over the idea of a giant wedding and they want a small, intimate wedding. And they feel a little bit insecure because what if, they go to a lot of websites and they see like big wet bridal parties and they're like, is this photographer going to be weirded out by the fact that mine is smaller, for example? And maybe your client's headspace is a totally different thing. Maybe they want the big giant wedding and they're looking for a photographer who can handle all of that because they also have kind of like some crazy aunts and uncles who need some wrangling and they need someone with a big personality to help manage all of that. It's your job to go in and say, who is this person? What are they experiencing? And you can go back and talk to some of your past clients and say, hey, I have been wanting to redo my website to make sure that I give people the information they need the most. And so can I just ask you a few questions about how you were feeling when you were searching for a photographer? Like, what was that experience like for you? What did you see at first that kind of disappointed you? What worried you? Like, you're thinking, oh, am I going to find this thing that I need? And just talk to them and ask them questions and look for patterns, and anything that is consistent from person to person, you can absolutely pull out and use. That's total gold. So I think that's again, it's just empathy for the person in the other chair. And just to tell a super quick story, I ask people never to forget this. So I was walking through New York Times, like Times Square in New York City. And, you know, it's late at night. If you've ever been to Times Square, you know, it's like bright and everything's flashing and there's like 10,000 things competing for your attention, and millions of dollars are poured into advertising. And there's people just walking through, passing on their way to places. But I'm walking through and I see the whole crowd like looking in one direction, and everybody's like super excited. I'm like, is like George Clooney here? Like, what's going on? And I stop and I look, and it takes me a minute to realize what I'm looking at. It's a billboard, and I realized they had put a camera on Times Square. And so if you were standing within this certain zone, you could see yourself up on the billboard. And everyone was like, hey, I'm on a billboard in Times Square. And they're all taking pictures. And every single one of those people went home with a picture of that company's advertisement. They were completely ignoring all of this other stuff because that company showed them, which is exactly what Jessica was talking about earlier. They want to see themselves in your website. So whether that's putting in a friend's reference like the lobsters, whether that's mentioning, you know, you've got a blended family and you want someone who can handle that very sensitively when it comes time for family photos. You know, calling out specific things can really make people feel at home when they land on your site.
My turn?
Jess, yes, please.
Okay. So whenever I talk to photographers, a question that I get a lot is, how can I break into a more luxury market, or how can I get higher end clients? And I think that this is a really hard question to answer, because a lot of times we think that just saying luxury or saying high end is specific enough. But that could, again, mean so many different things to different people. And so I think the natural inclination for a lot of my clients or students who have asked this is to look at other luxury brands and think like, okay, what do they like look and feel like? But if you look at like Chanel or Architectural Digest or wine brands and things like that, they typically don't have any copy on their website. If they do, it's very, very minimal. But what we're forgetting is that those companies have built recognition over years, and it's almost like an exclusivity thing of like, if you have to ask, then you probably shouldn't be here kind of thing. And we don't want to create that culture on our websites, because we don't have that luxury, for lack of better word. So because we aren't well known, because not that you're not well known, but because we're fighting for space in this industry and things like that, we have to make sure that we are showing people the luxury experience that they're going to be getting, or the high end experience. And that can only happen through words. So I would challenge anybody who wants that, absolutely go for it, but think through, what does luxury or high end look like to me? Does that look like exclusivity? Does that look like quirky or unique kind of events and things like that? If you're a wedding photographer, does that look like super traditional and really fancy? Does that look like really extravagant? That could mean a lot of different things. Does it look like adventure, like something really crazy that you're doing, but it's high end because it's such a cool experience? So thinking through what exactly you want your high end to look like, and then starting to weave that into talking about your experience. And what that's going to do is, it's not going to put you in another battle. It's going to separate you into somebody who people say, oh, okay, that's the only person that I want to work with because they are exactly my style, or they know exactly what I want in terms of a high-end experience and things like that. So I think just getting really specific is important when you want to make that leap. The last thing that I would say is to always write for the business that you want, not necessarily just the business that you have. And that comes with a caveat. The business that you want can't just be because everybody else has it. You have to kind of do some digging and think through, okay, is this actually what I want? What do I want it to look like? Everything like that. But once you've done that, you don't have to wait until you have all of those types of clients in your roster already to be able to speak to them. It's actually the other way around. You have to speak to them first in order for them to come. So I would say write for the business you want as soon as possible so that you can start attracting those types of clients.
And I feel like this dovetails off of the luxury, this question. Thoughts on pricing on a website? Should photographers list their prices or their menu of services?
Sure. I think that goes back and forth. A lot of people feel like they maybe shouldn't. I actually did a study back in March. Over 71% of our clients that actually answered a poll actually do put their prices on their website. So I think there is value there. I think you can layer it. I think some people think they have to put the whole thing out there and, here it is. But you can actually, put some reservations behind it. Like here, maybe this is the starting fee or something like that. Because people get kind of stuck on logic, especially when it goes to like in-person sales. I think a friend of mine who's a photographer, she's always like a little dumbfounded that people are like, well, I said the thing started at $250, but when they come in for the in-person sale, next thing they're knowing, they're like, oh, I thought everything was just $250. Oh no, I got to buy all these extra products and stuff on top of that. Let them know there's extra caveats there, and then you can have the pricing options or click here to read more about everything else involved. But I think having your initial fees definitely have that, so there's no shock, price shock. You don't want to scare your clients before you even get them through the door. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that you always need to mention price on your website, whether it's even just like inquire for a quote, like all of our quotes are custom, inquire here or book here or whatever, schedule a discovery call. But if you skirt around price, people are going to get the heebie-jeebies and feel like you're like trying to hide something. But so I'm a fan of putting a starting price and making sure that people know that it's a starting price and that things go up from there. Mm-hmm. Or another good way to do it is putting an average investment price so that people can get a little bit more of an accurate picture of what people typically spend. Like if your starting price is like 2 hours of coverage or something like that, but people usually book the 8 hours of coverage, then you want to give a more accurate representation of what most people are booking, I would say. But it really comes down to what your business is looking like at the time. Because when I started out in business, I put a starting price. My starting price was embarrassingly low. And I really just wanted to get on the phone with as many people as possible because I knew that that was going to help me strengthen everything in my business, really, and that I had a better chance of closing them at that point on the call. But if you feel like you're getting way too many inquiries, then you might want to put something that's a little higher. So maybe an average investment, or put the exact prices on there so that people know what they're getting into before you have to spend that extra time with them so that you know that they're qualified. So I think that comes down to what you really want in your business. Do you want an influx of inquiries right now, or do you want just really qualified people to talk to?
Yeah, and just one quick piece of psychology that is helpful is there's something called the anchoring effect, where when people don't know what to expect, they're going to grab the first number they see and compare everything else against it. And so they did this fantastic study where there was a sale, like a showroom selling billiard tables. And the salesman would usually take people to the cheapest one first, be like, look, this is within your range, and then take them to like the more expensive models. But then one day they decided to reverse it and take them to the most expensive model first and then show the rest of them. And they found that when you showed the most expensive one first, it actually increased the sales because they're like, oh, so I don't know what a billiard table costs. Okay, this one's $3,000, but that one's $300. Okay, I can buy like a $700 one. People are a lot less educated about what things should cost than you think that they are. And so one technique you can use, everything else that's been said is useful. Another tool in your box, you could say our most popular package is this, but our prices start here. So that's just another little trick you can get if you're concerned about people reacting to price tags. Like, okay, I know that most people spend this, but like, okay, it starts over here. That kind of covers some bases.
We've got just a couple minutes left, and there are a ton of questions pouring in, and they're all really good. So picking is really difficult at this point. But how much information is too much information? Do you keep it light and fluffy in hopes that clients will pick up the phone and call you and you can tell them more on the phone? Or do you put it all out there?
I always say, this is not my quote, this is from Joanna Wiebe from Copy Hackers, but people read long copy, they don't read boring copy. And so I think more than anything, make sure that it's compelling and make sure that it's appealing to what they actually want. I don't really love the word information because I feel like that lends itself more to like an encyclopedia style of writing. And so I think if you really focus on all the things that we talked about today, making sure that it feels conversational, kind of like a coffee date situation, and that you're pulling people into the page with things that relate to them, and that you're making sure that you know what people need at the next step and all of that, that people will read down the page. And I think if you look at any high level coach's sales page, they're upwards of like anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 words of copy, but people will go through, either they'll scroll to where they want to book because they're sure that they want to buy, or some more calculated buyers will scroll through the entire thing and read it all. So I think that as long as you have that copy really geared toward your audience and it's really compelling, that length doesn't necessarily matter as much. I also was the high school teacher when my kids would ask me, how long does it have to be? I'm like, as long as it needs to be. So I don't like to give a definitive answer on that one, but I think definitely all the stuff that everyone said here today is going to help you make sure that it's compelling.
Yeah, make it engaging. I think we tell photographers that something will happen where, like say a blog post, they'll just put what I call the film strip, where it's just 1,000 photos of one event. And you're like, okay. And then there's a call to action maybe at the bottom. You're like, you have to scroll all the way through all this, but you got no context out of what the day was. At least have an image, have some, some language and copy to go with that, break it up, make it interesting. I tell people like, hey, look at a web page with 250 words on it with just text, and then look at it with images when you sprinkle it in. It looks like a completely different website page. When it's just text, it can be daunting for people. A lot of words on the page, all of a sudden they're like, oh, what am I looking at? But if you sprinkle in some imagery or some call outs and stuff like that, that's when the page becomes more engaging and inviting to customers.
I'll just throw in real quick. The answer about length to me is, as much as it takes to reassure the person that taking the next step is the right thing to do, and no more. So, like she said, if it's a coach who you're booking a $10,000 session, maybe you're going to want 10,000 words to reassure yourself, like, this is a good investment. This is a good investment. You're going to need to hear it over and over again because people are trying to reinsure themselves. But if you're just booking a discovery call, just some personality, enough that like, I feel comfortable with this person, that might be all that's needed.
Yeah.
Jeremy, earlier you were talking a little bit about keyword stuffing.
Yes.
And like, the best Twin Cities photographer ever, and then you just keep saying that over and over again.
Yes.
Quit stealing my SEO tags.
You guys. All right, so in 60 seconds, can you tell me what's like your number one best tip for writing copy that's conducive to organic SEO for your location, for local SEO?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things is actually blogging. I know a lot of people are afraid of blogging, but that's the one way to keep spreading, where you're located at. in a more organic way versus just constantly sprinkling in your location, the type of photography you do, stuffed in every single page. You know, if you're shooting in Wilmington, North Carolina, you can talk about Blank's awesome wedding photos at the beach. And then there's this whole like story that you're telling about this customer's experience. That's going to work more organic because people are going to be looking for Wilmington Beach photographers. And then this article they might stumble across versus just landing on your homepage. And then they're going to get to see like, okay, the story that you've developed for them, they're going to have call to actions that will lead them deeper into your pages. So at the end of the day, make sure you have your call to action set up, no dead ends. Don't let them get to any page at the bottom and they have nothing to do because immediately they're going to leave it. Don't send them to other pages that you don't want them to go to. Don't even send them to your Facebook if you don't want them to go to your Facebook. If you want them to stay on your website, because that's the core place you sell, then make sure that they're not going to be distracted to go elsewhere. I think a lot of things happens like we want to drive people from social media to us, not away from us.
That's magical. That's super solid advice. Okay, team, I apologize for being awful at time management. We are now 3 minutes over, and I know that Jenika specifically asked me, can we please be done in an hour because she has other things to do. So Jenika, will you do me a favor? And if people need to find you or they would like some additional help, where do they find you?
So you can go to psychologyforphotographers.com, and I have a free ebook called How Clients Make Decisions About Money. So if you need information about how do I frame my prices, how do I write a pricing page, what about a pricing guide, I've got all the magic psychology you need to know how to present numbers. And I just wanted to address super fast the elephant in the room. Whenever you talk about websites, I just want to acknowledge that websites are going to bring up all the stuff for you, right? It's going to bring up what your 8th grade English teacher said to you. It's going to bring up, am I a boring person? It's going to bring up, you know, if you're going for a luxury client like Jessica was talking about, am I worthy? Like, no, I'll wait to do that till I'm ready. It's going to bring up your body image stuff because you're going to want to post, you know, like your about page with you going like this. You're going to want to like hide behind the camera. It's going to bring up all of this stuff. And even when Jeremy mentioned the Hotjar thing, I know that at least 5 of you were like, I don't want to install Hotjar. I don't want to look at the heat map of my website because I don't want to feel the rejection that people are only reading my headlines. Okay. Like, I just want to acknowledge that everybody goes through this, including every person that you see on this panel.
Yep.
And that it's not rejection when someone scrolls really quickly, they're just in a hurry. It's not rejection when someone doesn't book you, they just didn't see how you could solve the problem that they have. So just come back, like let go of all that energy of all the judgment that you think people are heaping upon you, and just go with what is the biggest problem this person has and how can I solve it, and just stay in that place. And that's going to help you through all of those emotional waves that come at you.
Jess, if people need more help with their copywriting, and they do, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to just hang out with me, you can find me on Instagram at Jess Jordana. My website is jessicajordana.com. And if you guys feel like you have decided that this off season is the time that you want to up level your copy, I do have a resource for you called the Promptlets. And basically these were born out of my absolute aversion to one size fits all templates. And so the Promptlets really walk you through first prompts to get the right ideas out of your head and onto paper without the judgment of it needing to be finished copy. And then we have a series of mini video lessons that apply to the page that you're writing for to help you understand the how and the why behind it. So you're not just like plugging words in and then you don't know what to do with them after that. And then we have a library of templates for each page that will fit with different business goals or styles, so that you can find something to guide you through how to put the words on the page, but it's not just going to be a one size fits all kind of thing where everybody ends up with the same thing at the end. So the goal is that at the end, you have copy with depth that is really going to be that foundational message that's going to help you in all areas of your business. And I actually have, don't tell, I have a special coupon code for everybody here. It's PPA is the coupon code to get 20% off of the website bundle specifically. So I don't know if there's a group we can drop that in, but PPA is pretty simple to remember. So everyone here today can get 20% off of that website bundle to write your website.
That's awesome.
And if I'm going to come and hang out with you and the dog for a glass of wine and an episode of Friends,
totally anytime.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Socially distanced, of course.
I mean, obviously, we would wear masks the whole time and use straws.
Of course. Yeah.
And then Jeremy, if people are looking for the best website hosting platform on the planet.
Yeah, come to photobiz.com. Right now, we actually have a great promotion running, 50% off on the annual with Thankful 50. So it's a great promotion with our entire system. You know, you get your hosting, you get blog, you get your commission-free store, the website builder, forms, email marketing tools, everything all in one place. It's an incredible service that we offer. And we have a support team you can actually call compared to some of these other places. The other thing is, if you're interested in getting some education, I host every Thursday at 2 p.m. Well, today it's going to be 3, but I go and do AMAs.
Nice
So ask me anything, you know, about website stuff. So we go over anything. You don't even have to be a customer, but you can join in and ask questions about what you should do. And today I'm doing website reviews. I actually review our customers' websites. So this is kind of what I kind of do daily, is let them know like what's working, what's not working, and what they can benefit in fixing it.
That's pretty magical. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to be here. I really hope that all of you who are watching got at least one nugget. I'm sure that it was probably 10, but I hope that you took notes and you got some good nuggets out of this, and that you were able to raise the tide in your business. And yeah, Ronan, what do I need to do now? What buttons?
Wow. Davey and Jeremy and Jessica and Jenika, my mind is blown. But I normally just do a 2-minute summary of the key things that I learned. So what I learned today was, make sure that your ideal client sees themselves in your website, in both the images and the words that you do to connect with your ideal client. And don't forget that second person, the you, because that will connect with that client. And thirdly is, don't forget that good and done is much better than perfect. Just get your website done and get it up there. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Davey, for putting this panel together. You were all amazing. We will share the links in the group as well with all your special offers. Thank you for all your offers to help our viewers.
Before you close this, Jeremy, will you tell us where do people go for the website critiques and that weekly meeting?
Yes, it's facebook.com/photobiz. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Okay, think tankers, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you all again soon. And thank you very much, guys, for joining us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye for now.